For those of you joining us, the Danville Town Council meeting will begin shortly.
Marie, it's 5 o'clock, but I'm going to go ahead and wait a moment. Is Newell on currently, or is he not on yet?
I do not see Newell.
Okay, so it is 5 o'clock though. So let's go ahead, and at this time, I'd like to go ahead and welcome everybody and call this meeting to order for the Town Council regular meeting for this Tuesday, June 1st, 2021. Marie, would you mind taking the roll call?
Absolutely. Councilmember Fawn.
Here.
Councilmember Stepper.
Here.
Councilmember Storer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Arnerich. And Mayor Morgan.
I am here.
And we have one council member that is currently not present, but we expect him shortly.
I was just going to say, as soon as he comes on, we'll make sure that we acknowledge his presence at that time. I'd also like to ask if there are any other announcements to be read. Marie?
Yes, this meeting is being held by teleconference only on Zoom, and a recording will be made available on the town website. To provide live comments during the meeting, use the raise hand feature in Zoom, and when the mayor opens up that item to the public, you can raise your hand at that time. Your name will be announced, and only your audio will be enabled. You're asked to state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. And again, wait until the mayor opens that item to public comment before raising your hand. And I'll just apologize in advance if I mispronounce anybody's name. And that is certainly why we're going to ask you to go ahead and repeat your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And now we'd like to go ahead and go on to item number 2, which is a pledge of allegiance to the flag. And this evening, I would like to ask the president of the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection Board member, Matt Stamey, to lead us this evening in the flag, in the pledge to the allegiance to the flag.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to changes to the order of the agenda. Is there any changes to the order of the agenda this evening?
No changes this evening.
All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and move on to item number 4. Item number 4 is for the good of the town. For the good of the town is an opportunity for the public to address the council on items that are not on the agenda this evening. If you would like to speak under the good of the town, please use the raise your hand feature. And Marie Sunseri, our city clerk, will call on you. As she mentioned before, you have 3 minutes to speak. If you could please repeat your name so that we know that we are saying it correctly and pronouncing it correctly, we'd really appreciate that as well. You also have an opportunity to address the town council under the good of the town. If you'd like to write in and email a letter, you can do so as well. Those have to be received before 11 o'clock the day of the meeting. So first I'm going to start by asking, are there any letters that were received, Marie, that we have not received as of yet?
No, there was no public comment in writing that was received prior to the council meeting this evening.
Okay, so no under the good of the town in writing. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak and address the council for under the good of the town this evening that are attending the meeting?
Yes, there are several hands raised. The first speaker is Judy Lloyd, and I'll go ahead and share my screen and show the timer.
Great. Hello, Judy, and welcome. Judy, are you there?
Oh, hi. I just was able to unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Welcome, Judy. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
As you know, I am here today as your president and CEO of the Danville Area Chamber of Commerce. First, I want to thank the mayor, the town council, city manager, and Jill and Liana from the economic development team for the wonderful job that you've all done to help our businesses grow and thrive during the pandemic. Through your generous grants and funding programs like the Business Assistance Program, you helped Danville businesses get through a situation that was completely unprecedented, for which there was no safety net. Among the things that have been very well received in the community, as you know, has been our outdoor seating on our city streets. This is not just for Danville residents, but for those who love the new vibrancy of our downtown community. We support the town's decision to reconstitute the parade with the Kiwanis Club, who have done so much to support our community. But while everyone loves a parade, we are starting to hear a crescendo of concerns from downtown businesses and their customers, both in retail and restaurant. They worry that the decision may impact how long the expanded outdoor seating can remain in place. The expanded outdoor seating in parks have been very positive, as we know, very successful, and an integral part of what's kept our community alive during the pandemic. So if it's possible to keep the parklets open into the fall, that will help our businesses recover and increase revenue and tax dollars for our community. We should also consider ways to enhance our beautiful downtown with a more permanent town square walking district. So as you contemplate the next steps for outdoor seating, think about if there's a hybrid model to the parklets, something that could be a win-win for all, and how we can best collaborate on a solution that includes input from the business community as well as the community at large. We are here as your Danville Area Chamber to help. We are the meeting place and convener for the Danville community, and we are so grateful for our partnership with the town. We're looking forward to being an integral part of the short-term and the long-term solutions, moving forward in a way that will help our businesses continue to thrive and our downtown vibrant for years to come. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Judy, and you do so much as well. Thank you so much for taking on this task as president and CEO of the Chamber. As you probably know, we were in our 5th study session and budget review. This morning was our 5th and last one for that. And we've had the opportunity on numerous occasions to discuss parklets and the like. So one of the things that we were looking at is possibly putting this as an agendized item on June 15th. And I'd like to ask Joe your thoughts on that as well.
Well, certainly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know if there are other speakers that want to address this, but I think that as Judy indicated, the town has worked very, very closely with the business community to try to do everything possible to support them through the pandemic. With respect to the outdoor seating, that has happened through the temporary land use permits that have been granted to allow for that. Right now, those temporary land use permits run through August the 1st. And there was some discussion this morning, and there will be some additional discussion at your June the 15th meeting about the possibility of extending that for some additional period of time, possibly to the end of August. To the end of August. I think that the point that was made, that was talked about this morning, that folks need to keep in mind is that when these temporary LUPs were issued, they were issued because of the declaration of the state of emergency owing to the pandemic. On or about now, June the 15th, things are going to be transitioning back to full occupancy. And in order to consider extending these further, it's really necessary to look at what the zoning ordinance and what our building standards are, because they weren't ever intended to go on indefinitely. So one of the things that the council has talked about that will be in the capital improvement program that will go to council on June the 15th is the preparation of a new downtown master plan that will look at things like outdoor seating, street furniture, lighting, all of the things that have been very frequent topics of conversation in our discussions with the chamber and with others. And I do think that in areas where we see some of these temporary land use permits cover property that is private and not within the public right of way, that there will continue to be opportunities for those business owners to come forward and look to make those more permanent. But again, that'll have to be done in conjunction with what the non-pandemic, I'll call them, requirements are that are related to that type of outdoor seating. So that would be my response to the comment.
Okay, and we, if there's anybody else that wants to speak on it, I just wanted to ask ahead of time and let everybody know that if they are speaking about that this evening, that we planned on putting it as an agenda item. All right, so thank you so much for that. Marie, are there any other speakers?
Yes, the next, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. The next speaker is Veronica Benjamin.
Welcome, Veronica.
Yes, hello again. Yes, I'm Veronica Benjamin. Very nice to see you again, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. Once again, I'm joining this meeting to just represent part of the community and how we feel regarding the police shootings of Tyrell Wilson and Vladimir Arboleda. Once again, I'd like to ask that the town council consider making permanent memorials to both of these men who lost their lives in our town. I think as we all just observed Memorial Day yesterday, sometimes even when we remember something very painful, it can help in the long process of healing. And also as you're reimagining the downtown area, which has become much more, much more vivacious over the years, it'd be wonderful to support different kinds of public art as a way to, both beautify and also make our community maybe a bit more complex, so we can actually have civic discussions and reflections on complex things that have happened here. I'd also like to talk about the legislative presentation that was given by Diane Friedman during the last town council meeting, which was excellent. I'd just like to ask that the town council publicly support some of the current legislation aimed at police reform, such as SB 2, hold on, I'm looking for the name of it, the Kenneth Ross Jr. Police Decertification Act of 2021. This bill would make it possible for, at the state level, I know California is one of, I believe, 4 or 5 states that doesn't have statewide legislation that makes it possible for a police officer's post-certification to be permanently removed so that they can't hop from one jurisdiction to another. Given what this town and the trauma that this town has been through, especially with one officer, I think this is very relevant legislation for our town to consider publicly supporting. Because I know that you maintain a page of legislation on the town website. So I would really like to see this added or at least considered by the town council. Again, that's SB 2. Finally, I'm not sure if this is the time for me to mention it, but I was looking at one of the presentations prepared by Chief Shields. And in there, I noticed that a contract negotiation with Axon will result in an annual savings of $6,275. Given that his wonderful negotiation skills have given this benefit to the department, I'm assuming they will no longer need those funds and request that these funds, roughly $6,000, be earmarked for our proposed memorial to Tyrell and Latimer. Just a suggestion. Again, we're really happy that everyone works hard to save money for the town, but we would definitely like to see some of those funds be redirected towards a project that's aimed at community healing. I'd also just like to commend the town on the new Danville Town Talks website. That's just really a good development, and thank you for setting that up. That's all. You again.
Thank you, Veronica. Marie?
Yes, one moment. The next speaker is Sarah Stroin.
Hi, Sarah, are you available? Are you there?
I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Can you pronounce your name? So
Thank you, Marie. Yes. Hi, Madam Mayor. My name is Sarah Stroin. And thank you for hearing me today. Thank you, Veronica, for your words just now. I just wanted to reiterate a few things that were already said. And also just to start with, I'm really looking forward to the San Ramon Valley Fire fire district presentation on the First Responders for Mental Health Plan. That's really near and dear to my heart. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the presentation. Yeah, so again, just I'm a community member, and I'm here again just to voice my support for justice for Latimer Arboleda and Tyrell Wilson, who, as everyone knows, were killed by Officer Hall, within 3 years of each other in our town. And so the one thing that Veronica touched on was featuring SB 2, the piece of legislation that's working its way through, I believe, the California Senate right now. I think that it is a piece of legislation that is widely supported by Californians. I saw a recent poll that showed about 60% of Californians are in favor of this legislation, which specifically works to decertify police officers who have, gone against department protocol, and doesn't allow them to just be transferred to different jurisdictions within California or within our county. And as was mentioned by Veronica already, this would be something that, especially in the wake of the 2 shooting deaths by Officer Hall, I think would be something that it would be nice to see our town publicly support. So that's that. And then at the last meeting, I brought up the need for permanent memorials, or me and a few other community members brought up the need for permanent memorials to Latimer and Tyrell, which I think, I also would agree would contribute to just community healing. And so I didn't hear anyone really respond to us last week. I might have left. I had to leave the meeting a little bit early, but it would be great if we could just know kind of maybe who on the town council might be willing to meet with us to discuss ways that we could, just begin that discussion at least of what that would look like. And I think that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. We appreciate your comments as well. Marie?
Yes, the next speaker is Karen Beck.
Karen, are you there? Karen, if you are speaking, we can.
Okay, sorry.
There you are.
I'm here. I'm here with my husband, Steve Beck, and he's going to speak for both of us.
Great. Well, welcome, Steve.
Hi, thank you. We've been residents in Danville for 34 years. And first, I'd like to say that we thank Veronica Benjamin for her comments and say that we support Contra Costa and their recommendations. We're really sick about the shootings in Danville, as I'm sure most people are. We would like to hear what policies exist or may be proposed to manage the makeup of the Danville police force. For example, does the town have a right to reject specific officers that are assigned to the town by the county, or to return an officer to the county that the town considers unacceptable? That's our comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve and Karen. Marie?
Yes, the next individual, just have a first name, Donna.
Donna, would you mind letting us know your first and last name, and welcome?
Hi, yes, my name, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. My full name is Donna Fatuhi. Sorry that I don't know how to change it on Zoom. I get really confused every time.
That's okay. We all do. No worries.
But I'm basically just here to kind of reiterate what has been said by multiple people. I am really glad to see that many people are coming out to speak out to these council meetings. I'm really glad that our council members are getting the chance to hear from people that maybe they don't often hear from. And I wanted to urge the council to support SB2 as well. Publicly, so that the town is aware of where we stand, and also beyond the town, outside the town, that this is not something that we will tolerate happening here in Danville. I also support any motion for creating a memorial for both Tyrell Wilson and Latimer Arboleda. Their deaths were preventable, and the fact that there's blood on someone's hands that worked for the city of Danville is something that I really don't think that we should take lightly, and we should remember that, and a memorial would really help work through that and remind us of that. Thank you.
The next individual to speak is Natasha Verma.
Natasha, are you there? We still can't hear you, Natasha, if you're speaking.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Hi, Natasha. Yes, I can hear you. Welcome.
Thank you. I relocated here from out of state with a family. I have a multiracial family. I have a child with special needs. And I've had other people in my family with special needs. I've had a family member with schizoaffective disorder, and I've seen how the difficulty of dealing with an adult who transitions into adulthood struggles with the system, dealing with a system that is unfortunately lacking in services, lacking in laws that are best for the safety of everyone involved, lacking in programs that offer mental health services in an adequate and timely manner. And I've seen that system fail many people, and that is the result of many of the people who live unhoused. And I thought that in living in such an incredibly privileged area, I was very foolish to think that somehow we had a bigger hang of things, or that we would know more about how to serve these people in our community. But unfortunately, Tyrell was where he was because of a system that unfortunately wasn't able to help him and many like him. And so to watch him become a victim of brutality, in addition to all of the unfortunate things.
Natasha, I think we lost you unless you were completed. You seemed like you were mid-sentence. Are you still there? Natasha? Okay, Marie, why don't we come back and see if Natasha would like to finish up. Let's come back to her then, if you don't mind. So,
Okay.
Marie?
The next speaker is Katie Mann.
All right, Katie, are you there?
I am, thank you. My name is Katie Mann, and I live in Danville. I've lived here for about 2.5 years, and I just will keep it short tonight. I just wanted to continue to be on these calls, just to remind that the town council and the community that we are thinking of Tyrell, and we're thinking of Latimer, and we're thinking about them all the time. And I specifically think about these men when I drive through the places that they died, where they spent their last minutes. I drive through the intersection where Tyrell Wilson died most, every other day at least, and think about him often and think about his family often. And I just really want to encourage the town to think about a permanent memorial for both of these gentlemen, to show that, we're sorry about what happened to them in our town, and to encourage the rest of the community to share this sorrow. And I, look forward to hearing kind of what next steps can be to make this happen. I'm sure, I with others on this call would love to be a part of making that happen. So I thank you for your time tonight. I just, I'm here just to keep remembering these men. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Appreciate your comments. Marie?
Yes, it looks like Natasha has rejoined us, and I believe she had approximately a minute left on her time.
Hi, Natasha, are you there? Modern technology at its finest, right? How are you?
Exactly. I'm good. Thank you, Marie. Thanks for taking my call again. So yeah, where I was leaving off with that is just, I wanted to reiterate and also agree with others that have called in today, that we as a town need to make a statement about this tragic loss of life and honor Tyrell and Latimer's memory, and reassure our community that their memory will be honored by our town in some form of memorial in public. That would be very, very meaningful to a great deal of people. And it would be an important transition, I think, that we need to make in recognizing ongoing systemic oppression of people, not only of color, but people with mental illness.
Okay, it looks like Natasha has either technology issues or whatnot, but her time is up.
Okay. All right, Natasha, thank you for your comments as well. And Marie, do we have more speakers?
There are no more speakers for the good of the town.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all the speakers that came for Under the Good of the Town. We did speak to Judy Lloyd with the chamber, and I'd also like to say to Veronica and Sarah and Karen and Steve, as well as Donna, Natasha, and Katie, thank you all for coming on this evening as well. I encourage all of you to stay on. Our next presentation is going to be with the EMS staff in San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District, which will be a great presentation for all of you to hear what we've been working on, as well as the Fire Protection District. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and move on to item number 5. And Joe, would you like to start us off on this?
Well, yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor, members of the Town Council. It is great to have Chief Meyer and his EMS team from San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District here with us this evening, introducing the first responders for mental health pilot program. As Council is aware from updates that we are receiving periodically through our County Mayor's Conference, Contra Costa Health Services, specifically behavioral health, has been working on a plan for improving mental health response countywide. They've identified the fact that about 1 in 5 adults in our county are dealing with behavioral health issues, and our current system of intervention and treatment oftentimes isn't accessible to the people that are experiencing a behavioral health crisis. So toward the end of last year, in the fall of last year, the county brought together called a working group to look at developing a system for community crisis response, with the goal, as I recall, they want to provide that anyone in our county can access timely and appropriate behavioral health crisis services anywhere at any time. So the group has been working toward understanding what happens when people experience mental health crisis, identifying barriers and so on. And the goals of that effort are to see if we can work toward having a single number for people to call to access services, creating a streamlined triage assessment tool, and then also providing for a non-police mobile crisis response team that would be available with the goal of responding to calls anywhere in Contra Costa County within 45 minutes. Here in the San Ramon Valley, our fire district has been looking at this proactively, looking at how they might be a part of the solution to meeting this challenge, either in a way that potentially would be complementary or perhaps more depending on the outcome of the countywide effort. The advantage obviously would be the potential to significantly shorten the response time for these types of calls here in the Valley. So been fortunate to have a number of conversations with Chief Meyer. Our chief, Alan Shields, and I have met with their team a couple of times. The district has been working for a while on a pilot program that they would roll out beginning in San Ramon and then continue on hopefully through Danville and other parts of the district. So it's my pleasure to be able to introduce Chief Meyer and his crew for this presentation this evening.
Yeah, welcome, Chief, and your crew. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. First of all, that was well said about everything that's going on in the county, so that gives a good background. I will say, I don't know, I do have a couple of folks that I kind of have to hopefully bump up because I'd like to introduce a few of the people that have been working on this. And I think it's important from our perspective to really give you a look at how we've gotten here and what we're looking at doing and how important it is we feel to the overall system. So I'll wait for just a second. I don't know if you have Laura Began and Mike.
Yeah, Chief Meyer, if you could just tell me the names, I can bump them into the panelist section.
Absolutely. I'll do. Why don't I do this? I'll do introductions at the same time as they come in. So be perfect. But obviously, you know, our president, Matt Stamey, the longest standing board member with the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. He's here today to make comments as necessary. This program has been vetted through our fire board, and we're proud of the program and the movement we've had. And then we'd have Vice President Ryan Crean, who should be bumped up, as well as currently on here you have Ken Campo, who is really my right-hand person that I deal with on all this stuff to make sure that we're doing a good job. He has over 40 years experience in local government, city fire districts throughout California. And then you have Deputy Chief Jim Sellover. He's not only assigned, as you all know, to the town of Danville as a liaison, but he also oversees our EMS division. And then as we see folks coming in, you can see Ryan Crane's puppy there. Hopefully we'll see his face. He's our vice president of the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. You have Michael Moen, who just popped in there. Mike Moen has the distinction of not only being a fire captain with the district, but also the union president for Local 3546. He represents the interests of the firefighters on the front lines. And it'll be interesting as we move forward. I'll speak to the significance of that as we move forward. And then it looks like we have Laura Began. She's our EMS coordinator. She's also an RN with the district. And then there's only one last person, and I apologize to have so many faces, but I think it's important for you to see who's been involved in this, is Malcolm Johnson. And Malcolm Johnson is not only assigned to the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District as our medical director. He's a doctor with the John Muir Hospital, ER doctor. Has been the physician of the year 2 years running in the past. I won't say too much about him, but it's been great for us to bring somebody in that's local. He also represents every fire department in Contra Costa County. So I just think it's important that you understand the folks that have been on the front lines working on this program. And I think it's relevant to see the diversity behind having the union president who's got the interest of the frontline firefighters, and doctors and nurses and board members, that you understand that this process, although it may have been sprung on the council and the community fairly quickly, there was a lot of work going on behind the scenes. I've heard a lot of the comments today. Those resonate with us. We understand that there is a changing environment in EMS throughout the United States. And we were very well aware of this issue dealing with not only 72-hour holds, but mental health calls that now have become basically an emergency medical call for us. So we've seen a change from 25, 30 years ago, and we had been working on a program like this with our EMS committee for several years. There'd always been kind of a disconnect between what we're seeing, what the police department's seeing, and how we operate together. And it was important to us. We respect greatly the police officers we work with, and we know they have a tough job. But it's important to this district specifically to be proactive and look at opportunities to really improve the patient experience for our community and try to ensure that we're doing the right thing, not only for the community, for our firefighters, and I think also for law enforcement. And I don't like to speak for law enforcement, but I will tell you, I spent a lot of time talking to law enforcement folks about this program. And as we've spoken about this program, it's been very clear that I don't believe that they want to be engaged in some of the areas that they are engaged in. So we think this is a big compliment to the system. So I just wanted to say that as a background. And just understand this, when we deal with changes like this, these are transformative ideas that I know are difficult for some fire departments to understand. But it was so important to have Mike Moen as a captain and as the union president for his firefighters be engaged so that we could get through the folks that are going to be on the front line and be dealing with these things. Make sure that we listen to them and their challenges and make sure we bring all that together in a plan that's not only going to work, it's going to keep the community safe, our fire and EMS personnel safe, and hopefully make a change in how we deal with these calls. So with that being said, I think, Marie, you're going to share the screen, I believe. And as we put up this PowerPoint presentation, I'll start with this. This isn't that big of a deal as far as an idea goes, right? It's not like we've got something that's essentially groundbreaking to what we see in the world. But I will tell you, when we deal with these calls, all mental health calls are vetted through the police department. And therefore, we are really secondary in all of these calls to the police officers getting on scene. And what this program really does is it kind of flips that upside down or turns it around, what we'd say is right side up. And when I say that, what I mean is we get a call that's nonviolent, non-criminal. We go in first and the police officers stage. The current way that things are handled is the police department vets the call, they get on scene, and we stage. And we wait for them to clear the scene, and then we come in. And sometimes we come in and sometimes we don't, but we get called out to every one of these calls. So that's the premise of it, fairly simplistic. And the way we look at it is kind of like we look at everything we do. We go on heart attacks, cardiac events, strokes, trauma. We're not physicians, but what's our job? Our job is to keep that patient viable, keep that patient alive, and keep them in the best condition we can as we hand that patient off. This is no different in our eyes, because what's become very clear, I think, to everybody is that mental health stigmas are gone. It's no longer 25, 30 years ago when every mental health call had a stigma of possible violence. What we're seeing nowadays is we're seeing very often calls that should be handled at the lowest level and really freeing up resources, and they're not. And we believe that our plan makes that difference. And you could even go to the next slide, because I kind of kept going while we were waiting. But it's a pilot program. And one of the things that and I spoke to this at the beginning, fire and EMS services first, law enforcement stages, and really a partnership. That's the thought process. So, but getting back to the point, we are going on calls on a regular basis that don't rise to the level of having a law enforcement officer there, number one. And number two, many times we believe that if we go in, it's just kind of natural to what we do. We are already dealing with medical emergencies that can be as traumatic as you can imagine. And we're dealing with the mental health aspect of that call. People forget that. When we go on scene, and I'm sure there's people in the audience right now that have been in a car accident, had a family member maybe even pass while they're there. Those all are mental health calls for us. We've got to deal with the family. We've got to deal with the person that may be having a cardiac event. And it's our job to get them through that, reduce the possibility of shock, keep the scene calm. So we're already predisposed to it. The last thing I'll say as we move forward is remember this as I go through this presentation. We want to complement the county's approach, but keep in mind, we're not putting clinicians, psychiatrists, psychologists on ambulances. What we're doing is we're saying we can handle this. We can rise to deal with this issue on the front lines. And I would take it a step further. You may or may not know this, but for your police officers and your firefighters, post-traumatic stress is now presumptive. It is presumed if I have a mental health condition as a firefighter or a police officer, that it is from doing this job. We believe that by giving our folks more tools to deal with the mental health aspect of our community's challenges, we're going to reduce our own stresses as well. Because right now, I can tell you, throughout the country, you don't get taught how to speak to a parent that has lost a child to SIDS. You don't get taught that. There is no class on that. And we believe that we're going to change the trajectory, not only for these calls, but for our firefighters as well. So as we look at the project goals, it's important that we partner with law enforcement. We're not looking to do this by ourselves. If we end up coming to the scene first, that doesn't mean that we don't want law enforcement there. They just stage, and we let them know if we need them to respond. So that's a key difference. So a lot of training, you can't just wing this stuff. There's got to be a lot of training and understanding of each other's roles. And that's going to be a difference, right? We also want to make sure that as we move forward, as I said before, we train our folks on how to de-escalate, identify different conditions that are common in the field to mental health crisis. And we want to try at the end of the day to be an advocate really for our community and reduce a lot of those law enforcement interactions, because we want police officers fighting crime. And that's where we want them. We want them out there doing the right thing for crime and freeing them up. As we go to the next slide, the one thing I want to say is the other part of that I think is important to note as far as challenges go. We end up on these calls when we're called. We end up on when we take somebody on a 72-hour hold. We take firefighters and ambulances out of service for up to 3 hours. That's bad for everybody. The more people that are out of district, whether it be at John Muir for a trauma or at County Health for a 72-hour hold, we are taking units that are here to fight fires and respond to your emergencies out of service. And it just so happens that at the county, it ends up being extended. Wall times are going up. That means that we're spending more time waiting. And so everybody loses. So if we're able to intervene and get the MCRT team, and I'll let Joe talk to what that means, but that 45-minute response, if we're able to get them there in 45 minutes, I've saved upwards of 2 hours for my folks in the field. So there's a common sense approach too, and a business approach I want you to remember. So the challenges are, and especially here in Danville too, is the fact that we need to get law enforcement, EMS, and fire on the same page, but we also need, and we have an accredited dispatch center, we need to make sure that when the phone call comes in, we can properly vet the call. Because if somebody calls in and we can't triage that call on the front end appropriately, then we have bad information, and then we have to rely on law enforcement to go in first. But if we have high-level dispatching, that triages that call on the front end. No different than if somebody calls today and gets one of our dispatchers, they'll get talked through CPR, how to deal with a stroke patient, how to deal with bleeding. It's going to be no different. We'll talk about that moving forward, but that is a key challenge we got to get right on the front end to be able to intercept these calls. The other thing is these calls are going up. I know we're going to show you some slides here. You might feel good about Danville. I have some comments about that. Probably not going to be real popular comments, but you didn't hire me to be popular. At the end of the day, you want, what we're concerned with. So, and as we go down, as I said before, the wait times are huge. And the last thing we think is going to happen through the county's initiatives and through us maybe doing something like this and getting in front of it, we hope to be able to not always go to psychiatric emergency services at the county. If folks are listening out there and we have a 16-year-old that breaks up with their girlfriend or their boyfriend and says the wrong thing, right now they're pretty much going to county health. And that's not always the right place for folks, right? So we want to make sure that we can get alternative destinations and we don't have to go to the same place every time. Next slide, please. Now the numbers. So just so you know, in this district, which basically goes border of Dublin to darn near the border of Walnut Creek, right? And then east. We're going to a mental health or behavioral crisis call every 21 hours. Every day, we're going to one. Every day. In Danville, it's probably every third day. As you see, it's about 30% of all calls. And so we've seen that these numbers have gone up, and they've gone up at a clip of around somewhere low side 10 to 20% a year. And it doesn't mean that everybody goes to county health, but you can see there 60% of all of our mental health calls are headed to county health. So, and then with others not being transported, what we believe is a couple things. And this is anecdotal. I'll just tell you, this is anecdotal. We believe that every time we don't transport somebody and we don't have some form of intervention, we believe that the odds of that person ending up on a hold go up. So if there's a way that we can proactively get in front of this and have alternative destinations and have things, have different ways to treat the patient, either through the county program or a combination thereof, we believe that we can start dealing with the cause, because that's what we see right now in the field. We're not dealing with the cause, we're dealing with the symptoms. And as everybody knows, if you're going to deal with the symptoms and you're not going to deal with the root cause, then it's only going to escalate. Now, I'm going to turn this over to Laura. I'll jump in at different times, but Laura's going to go over the next slide with the numbers. Now, Laura, go over the numbers and I'll make a couple comments as you go forward. But just notice you have San Ramon, city of San Ramon next to you, and the town of Danville right side by side. So she's going to go over what these numbers mean in the charts, and then I'll make a couple comments. Laura?
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Mayor Morgan and Town Council members. Happy to be here and excited to share our project with you. Just to break down this slide, we asked ourselves, where can we make the biggest impact? And we did a deep dive into our data from 2015 to present. We evaluated our behavioral and mental health calls, and what we found were two areas that we feel we can make the biggest impact. The blue bar represents our transports from the town of Danville, or city of San Ramon, to county psychiatric emergency services, or PES. And the orange bar represents those who chose not to be transported, whether it was a result of a resolved issue after our paramedic assessment or the patient refused transport. So we understand that our county partners have diligently been working on a plan to address expanding psychiatric emergency services to our other county hospitals, but we feel that our model of care is a complement to this, in that these are the two major areas that we can improve. And how we do that is by our EMS first approach. We hope to de-escalate or address whatever the potential behavioral call may be, to decrease that blue line. You can see town of Danville is consistent, city of San Ramon. There's been a consistent increase since 2015. So we are hoping that by getting there first, as Chief described with, the 16-year-old that may not need to go to a psychiatric emergency services, but is having some anxiety, we want to help de-escalate that before they even reach the point of that need for transfer there. The other is the orange bar, the not transported. Those are the people that we feel we can provide resources on scene for follow-up, for mental health resources within our community, so that they're not just left when we leave the scene with a potential for next time to call again, rather use the resources provided and set up some type of mental health follow-up. Anything to add, Chief?
Yeah, I think really that's key what Laura said. If we can identify and then also follow up, we believe that that's a higher level of service than just, whatever happens to the patient after that. Not our concern. Many times in defense of my firefighters, they don't get an opportunity to follow up necessarily, right? They go to the hospital, they want to know the outcome. But we believe if we engage EMS on this specific issue, we think that we're going to make a big difference. The only thing I'm going to point out, and I mean this with all due respect to the numbers, but I got to tell you, if the numbers don't make sense, sometimes they don't. And maybe there's something there. And I would tell you, we took over as a primary PSAP with the city of San Ramon in 2015. I can stand by the numbers on the right. I know those numbers are correct. You can see a steady increase, which is consistent with everything and everywhere in the United States. It just is. And there's no way around it. When we look at the left and we look at the town of Danville, remember, we're a secondary PSAP. So we might classify a call differently. So we're only going to get the calls we get, and we're only going to respond to the calls that we're called to respond to. Now, that doesn't mean that those aren't accurate numbers. But when you look at numbers and you see stuff like this, I just want to make clear, these are not, we have to rely on numbers secondarily. And again, I don't mean that to say anything is not accurate. These are predicated though on data that we receive from PCRs. And it doesn't necessarily line up to what we see as national trends. And keep in mind, the last thing I'll say, these are only county health and against medical advice non-transports. If you take what we did and what we're on pace to do, going to county health, against medical advice non-transports, and alternative destinations, because the county did give us the ability during the pandemic to go to alternative destinations, Danville's actually on pace to be closer to 100 mental health calls. Keep that in mind, because it looks like 52, but no, figures lie and liars figure. The numbers that we have actually, as we look at the first quarter, are closer to 100 mental health calls, which is every third day we're going on a call in Danville. And keep in mind this, from actual cardiac arrest events, mental health calls are outpacing actual cardiac arrest events. So you got to keep all these things in mind as you look at the numbers. Laura?
Thank you, Chief. Next slide, please. So these are our objectives of our plan. And I'm going to go into more detail on the following slides, so I won't dwell on this one too long. But we are doing a 5-step approach. And on the next slide, I will go into detail about our immediate response and how it will begin with the moment our call reaches our dispatch center. Our 911 dispatchers will employ a call-taking triage system using a specialized emergency medical dispatch card, or card 25, to evaluate violent versus non-violent calls. Once this is identified, we will deploy our public safety model of care, and again, become a complement to the county mental health initiative with the capability of video conferencing for real-time triage, assessment, and de-escalation should the call warrant. Our dispatchers will be available to reach out to county mental health specialist team to initiate their 30 to 45-minute response goal in the first few minutes of our call. Next slide, please.
And real quick, just to talk about it, and I love being on Zoom because people get to text me and tell me what I said wrong. So thank you to those folks. Real quick, I think it's important, but they make a great point. I think it's important to remind everybody on the town council and the public, a primary PSAP is a public safety answering point. And I use that word and it becomes secondary. But what that means is, in the previous slide on the numbers, is when we get a 911 call in the city of San Ramon, that goes directly to our call center. And our call center takes the call in the same room with fire and police dispatchers, and then it gets vetted that way. So that's a primary PSAP. That's directly to us. When I mention secondary PSAP, in the rest of the county, we are considered a secondary public safety answering point. And what that means is it goes to the sheriff's office in Martinez, it gets vetted there, and then they decide whether it's going to come to us, whether it's going to go to police, or whether it's going to go to both. So I will tell you, some of my greatest frustrations in the past 5 years are calls that have not gotten to us, where I suddenly get a complaint about how terrible we are, and I find out that it never even hit our dispatch center. So I just want to make clear that we don't have control over that initial call outside of the city of San Ramon. And that's the difference between those two. So I apologize about not making that clear. Go ahead, Laura. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. So this is the card 25 that I talked about, the 911 call taking triage. So what this call does is it breaks the call into the violent versus non-violent. So throughout this presentation, the blue or the violent calls is currently how we go about business. And what it is law enforcement approach and fire EMS stages. And the violent, as you can see, would be a danger to self, others, so on and so forth. And then non-violent breakdown would be non-suicidal and alert, suicidal or non-threatening and alert. And of course, we would always request law enforcement on scene if there's any deviation to what we initially thought. Next slide, please. So this is the model of care. Again, the right or the blue column is currently what we do. And what we're trying to do, as Chief described earlier, is flip this approach with our nonviolence. So it's very important to note that we already respond to these calls. This is not an addition to our calls. And if you, as I said, look to the blue column, this is what we do. And then the green column, once nonviolent patient has been identified, this is where the shift will occur. So again, with us approaching first and law enforcement now staging and ready if we need them. From here, as always, our fire EMS crews will evaluate the scene for safety, and when determined safe, they begin the patient assessment. It's important to point out that this is what our paramedic firefighters are highly trained in, the patient assessment. This is the crucial step that allows our 7 to 10 minute response to provide a person-to-person skilled medical assessment. We evaluate for medical need. For example, if a patient is diabetic with a low blood sugar who's behaving erratically due to their medical condition, this can't be assessed over the phone. It requires a blood sugar check and identification of signs and symptoms of the medical need. Once it's corrected, if the behavioral problem has still been identified, then we would go into this model of care. Once the patient assessment reveals a behavioral mental health problem, a brief to dispatch and law enforcement will occur. And it's followed by the initiation of the behavioral response. And if necessary, de-escalation techniques to include engaging the county mental health specialist. Should the call escalate, we will immediately engage law enforcement and step away. And then from here, determine patient destination or provide resources as indicated. Next slide, please.
Well, real quick, just so everybody knows, I know there's always concern for firefighter safety, and we will, as we move forward, de-escalation techniques matter. The ability to call PD into the scene matters. So it's very important to note that. The only other thing I'd say that I think Laura did a good job, but I want to emphasize, many times we have calls with a patient that has dementia. Doesn't doesn't know what's going on. Or you end up in a position where you have low blood sugar, as she said, other medical conditions where suddenly the person seems like they may be having a mental health issue, and it really is a combination of possibly some medical disorder. And we, on a regular basis, and it's not the police officer's fault. They have to err on the judgment and the safety of the patient. So when they go in, they see that they have to make judgments to reduce liability and make sure the patients are safe. And so a lot of times that's something that we see that we can at least get in front of and hopefully get a better outcome. So thank you, Laura.
Absolutely, Chief. So step 2, this is really where our background comes into play. And what we're looking at is a mental health frontline integrated response, which will include safety training for emergency medical dispatchers, EMS, fire, and law enforcement. This would really be the first time all 3 of us were in a room getting the same training on the same page for the same approach, and really hearing each other out on how our current approach works. The mental health education also includes awareness, common mental disorders. This will be through our EMS Academy, which we currently have, where we identify potential for a psychiatric emergency internship and our single role paramedic training. Next slide, please. So step 3 is really where it all comes together. And this is the actual training. In addition to building the base education for mental health, crisis management, and de-escalation techniques, which are crucial, our dispatchers, EMS, fire, and law enforcement will understand the 911 triage call, patient evaluation, and implementation of the model of care. Patient advocacy and community engagement will be at the forefront of our process to include exploring alternate counseling center destinations in our county. And we really want to make sure that this training is robust, that it includes the base mental health education in addition to scene safety awareness, the patient evaluation, crisis management, tactical de-escalation, and a really thorough understanding of the model of care and this new approach. Of course, always patient advocacy and our community engagement. And as Chief Meyer talked about earlier, our provider wellness. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our people that are responding to these calls, and in giving them this additional education, it also provides them with education on how to address their own needs as well. Anything to add on that, Chief?
No.
Next slide, please. So step 4, our increase in community outreach activities. One of our priorities is to ensure that our community is aware of our program and that no matter what their call may be, physical or mental health, we're there to help. Beginning with an inaugural kickoff to include our board members, city and town council, community stakeholders, and spreading the word through public awareness video or flyers to our residents. We want to ensure that all are engaged and aware of their options for care, to include our robust outreach to our schools in the participating cities.
And I would add, I've heard from, and I'm sure you've heard from community members, one bad experience and then they decide not to call also. So for us, it would be very important that people knew that they had this. I commend the county. I think the county is doing a great job of putting together a program for the 45-minute response. But one thing I've noticed, at least for now, until we get ahead of the problem and start being proactive to the root cause, and allows us, and I'm going to steal the pandemic line, allow us to flatten the curve on these calls. It's very important that people know when they call 911, and they call 911 because they're at a loss. They don't know what to do. And 45 minutes, best case scenario for a county response, is good, but there's got to be some complementary piece that allows peace of mind for parents, for people that are suffering. So that's our thought process in making sure people know this change, because every other program that we see is not frontline firefighters. and EMS providers. It's one ambulance driving around a whole, county, or a few ambulances, serving millions of people. Ours is a different approach, and people need to be educated on it.
Go to the next slide, please. So the final step in our plan is we wanted to ensure a solid platform to review our steps and allow for feedback and continued process improvement. We do this through a data review, peer support and feedback, and individual incident evaluations. We talk to our personnel who are doing the work and listen to how we can improve. We look at our residents to determine whether they have a history of mental health concerns, and collectively work together to preemptively formulate a plan of care that is entered into our dispatch system, so that if a behavioral concern is reported, we instantly know how to approach and help on an individual basis. We also welcome and employ an independent third-party quality assurance team to evaluate our process for continued improvement, because we want to succeed, and this is how we believe we can. Chief, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, great. Next slide. And just on the third-party independent review, we would welcome the county to do that. We would. One of the things that the town council members may not know, but when I first got to the district, we were the highest performing fire district in the free world, but we had no third-party CQI, continuous quality improvement. We didn't review all of our PCRs, and I thought, well, that's pretty easy. I can just tell you I'm the best and never prove it. One of the things that we wanted to do when I got here was to have every one of our patient care reports, every interaction, be reviewed by a third party and find those gaps in service, because they exist. I don't care how good you are, you're going to make mistakes. And unless you embrace a culture of acknowledging those mistakes and improving them, you're doomed to make them over and over again. And in our business, maybe to the point where somebody loses their life. So we're not playing around with that. And so it's in our culture that third-party analysis by somebody else, and again, we welcome the county or whomever to do it, is important to the success, because I guarantee you, as we do this pilot program, we're going to find areas that we can improve on. And it's going to be better at the end of the first year than at the beginning. So the final slide's real simple. We'll stop. I know we've talked a long time, but there's a lot to this. We'll go back one, I'm sorry. One of the things that we think is important for the town to know is our engines are supposed to get anywhere in the district within 7 minutes. Our ambulances within 10 minutes. And a lot of folks don't understand that. That's kind of the key to us being the complement to the county's program, which is 45. So we'll be able to respond to these calls, triage them quickly, and get in front of this problem, we think, based on the fact that the sooner we get there, we believe the escalation, and we can, whether we de-escalate or we're able to interact, we'll be able to de-escalate and stop maybe something from spiraling out of control. So we really want to complement the county's program, but in being honest, 45 minutes is not going to get it done to deal with 911 calls. It's just the reality. We understand that this is different. It's innovative. It's unlike anything anybody's ever done or looked at doing, but we believe if we do it, that we can transform the way people look at mental health calls and look at them like they are. I mean, you either believe that a mental health call is a violent call that needs police response on every call, or you believe, well, let's be smart about this. Let's evaluate the call, and let's bring the appropriate resources based on what we triage the call to be. And that's what we believe. And if you go to the last slide, conclusion, I'm not going to read it off to you, but I would just like to take a moment to allow for, if Captain / Union President Mike Moen has any comments. I always like my firefighters are, I will say this, they're the best in the business. And they've been great to deal with on this project, and they've made this project better than it ever could be. So I'd like to give Mike, if you have anything to say. If not, I'll turn it over to you for a second or a few minutes.
Oh, thank you, Chief. I'd just like to do a shout out to Newell and to Karen. I haven't seen you in a long time, but it's good to see you again and under good circumstances, because this is very exciting for us. I think it's very exciting for us. I think, Chief, you did a good job at the presentation. I would like to underscore that labor definitely supports this. The firefighters support it. We think it's a long time coming, and it's not just something we support, it's something that we actually desire on the part of our patients. We handle medical and mental health emergencies on a daily basis, and we feel that this is definitely going to improve our level of service to our mental health care patients, to the extent that no one mental health care patient will be left behind. All mental health care patients will benefit from this plan. It's a specialized plan, and it assists the county in their needs, and I think it'll benefit everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I don't know, Dr. Johnson, do you have anything to add?
Hi, Chief. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. I'd just like to reiterate what Chief Meyer has said, is that, look, we're sending our providers out here to deal with these issues anyways. Let's give them some tools to be equipped to handle this. And not only that, but like Chief said, long-term is that it may even help our own mental health as well. So I think this is a it's a simple idea to a very complex solution. It's not the end of all to be of all, but it certainly is a big step in the direction of helping with all the mental health cases in this country.
Thanks, Doctor. And then I'm done, but I always turn it over to my bosses. I know you're all my bosses, but I have two distinct bosses, Vice President Green and President Stamey, to make any comments if they deem necessary.
All right, President Stamey, if you don't mind.
Please.
Okay, thank you for having us here today. My name is Ryan Green, Vice President of the Board. Also serving concurrently with the San Francisco Fire Department as a battalion chief. Been in the fire service for the last 27 years and served as a paramedic prior for about 15 years and had my fair share of these type of calls. I think this is a very unique opportunity, very proactive engagement from your fire district that they're looking at what is going to be best to serve our patients in the communities that we serve. In the fire service, we look at a fire problem from a very basic perspective. We call it the fire triangle or the fire tetrahedron. And what that is, the fire triangle has three parts. There's fire, oxygen, and heat. I'm sorry, there's fuel, oxygen, and heat that create fire. And the fire is that chemical chain reaction. And ironically, there's a parallel with our district right now. Our triangle is our fire board, our executive staff, and our labor group. And we are all working in a very collaborative method right now and complementing each other well to serve our public needs. And that creates our tetrahedron, if you will. So we're existing in this really positive space. In past working for several different agencies, I've never seen this type of collaboration between the three groups at the same time. And then reaching out to our public, the cities we serve and the citizens of those cities, and really having an opportunity to do something unique that's going to better serve our citizens in a really proactive manner. And really what I like best about this, and the chief pointed that out, is that QI portion. This is a pilot program. We'll make some mistakes, but we're gonna learn from those mistakes, and we're gonna take that feedback from all our stakeholders and try to do the best we can to push this forward and really serve our community in the most positive manner we can. Thank you for allowing me to have some time with you, Mayor Morgan and the district council. As a resident of Danville, I look back at the last 4 years, Danville's been touted as the safest city in California, which is a pretty cool thing. But we didn't get there on accident, right? We got there because we took very proactive positions like this to better serve our community. And I remember reading somewhere that Mr. Calabrigo said that was his #1 priority, was the safety of the citizens of his city. And I'm glad you take that stance, because my family lives here. I think this district has taken that stance as well. And we'd like to jump on that with you and do the best we can to move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Being the last person to speak kind of leaves you at a disadvantage, I think. all the eloquent words have been spoken. Anyway, the first thing I'd like to say is that the concept that we've been talking about has been well vetted with the board of directors. We spent a lot of time on it. And the bottom line is that unanimously, the board has approved the project, has approved the concept, and we're enthusiastically looking forward to getting the results. I think from our point of view, we're an all-risk fire protection district, but under that umbrella, you have to understand that what was good yesterday may not be as well received today from the citizens who expect a high level of service. And I think this just moves the district forward to, again, meeting and exceeding the service needs and levels of the citizens that we serve. And I think that the opportunity to bring a pilot program in and implement it, as Director Crean said, there will be some changes along the way, certainly. But we all as an organization look forward to being able to have a successful conclusion and having this program taken to the higher level. And we look forward to having the town of Danville help and support us in this project. And appreciate the time. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm not sure if Chief Myers has anything else to say before we start asking questions, if we're okay. Okay.
No, Mayor.
So, I wanted to thank all of you for being here this evening. And I can completely understand with Matt being the last one to speak, because I get to be the last one as well. So right now I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions from the council. I know that Karen's had her hand up for a while. Karen.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone coming and that he brought the whole crew. It really gives us the perspective here that this is not in any way a one size fits all program. It's very exciting to hear it explained in this kind of detail. I have a financial question. Back in 2004, California passed the mental health tax on 1% of California income for personal income. Are any of those funds available to make these programs happen? Because I think that any program that you all create, many of us on the council have been honored to serve on the Santa Maria Valley Emergency Preparedness Council. Any program that you all have created together is something that's going to spread widely. It's not just Pulse Point, Matt, it's everything you do is just first rate. So does anyone know anything about that tax, or is that something I can hear about later?
No, that tax specifically, we have been looking into, seeing what we can do as far as from a fiscal perspective. We've looked at that as an option. We don't know whether or not we're going to qualify. We've looked at Measure X funding. I think we're hopeful to come before the Measure X committee and ask for some assistance in getting what I would call seed money. I think the biggest lift is really in the first year of the program. And then after that, it's not unlike anything else we do. You have the highest level paramedics. Everybody on this in the district are all paramedics. So, and we, a little fact, we brought all that training in-house. And so currently we're adding this to the current training that we would give them. So it's really the startup costs to a certain extent. And then after that, it's the maintenance costs end up going down quite a bit. So we will continue to look at those funds. But I think that this is something, and I don't want to speak for my fire board, but this is something that we would, we're confident that we'll get seed money, but if we don't, we're confident that we'll bring a plan back that would be acceptable and fiscally prudent for our board of directors to accept and move forward with too. So
kudos, thank you very much.
Newell.
I just want to add, Chief, to your entire team, this has been an extraordinary effort. And to your last point there, our executive director from Discovery Counseling Center is on the call there, Kathy Shiverton. She fortunately is on that Measure X committee. And there is no doubt this is top of her list to help make that happen. But I do want to say, I think it was really important how you presented this to have particularly Mike on here. He's going to be concerned about the training, the safety of officers, Malcolm's expertise in the medical side, as well as Laura and James, who oversees the actual teams. This is just a good example of how this district has evolved to be, really, as you said at one time, top 3, and maybe it's really the #1 district in the entire United States, which we are all the beneficiaries on so many levels. And if you go back to the history of this department, it was just fire service. It moved on to ambulance, EMT. I mean, it moved to hazmat service. It is the most comprehensive agency. Not only everybody thinks is the fire department, this is an agency that you could spend an hour talking about the services it provides. And this is a natural conclusion of the health of the community, and the mental shift that you're proposing here is what's needed. Everybody kind of knows that. It's important no matter who is doing the dispatch. And we do know how to do dispatch. I'm sitting here in a live today because of San Ramon Valley Fire. They get to my house in 3 minutes and 10 seconds, by the way. When I was having a heart event and made the decisions on site to move me to a certain spot, that its outcome was perfect. And had they not had that experience of the team at the time, it was Captain Picard, they just did everything right. And it's the same thing in this case. That call went into 911. It went to police dispatch. They evaluated quickly, but they stayed on that call. They listened in until fire took over that call, which was only 10, 11 seconds. And they stayed on the call till fire said, we're going to take this, everything's going to be fine, and they moved out. So we have all of that. While this pilot is clearly going to work, and it's easier to do in the San Ramon because of the co-dispatch, just with the right training and a bit of pivot, that because as San Ramon Valley Fire serves half of its constituents are not on that dual service, right? Just the city of San Ramon, it's 88,000 people. There's more than 88,000 people who are not on that are part of the service district. So we do know how to do it, but it's important that it gets worked out well. And I think, Paige, the plan that you and the team have put together is extraordinary. It's the right time. And it's probably the only agency I know that could probably do it successfully, because you are used to change, and too many fire departments, they just provide fire. And it's really, really hard to make those kind of changes. And with Mike and everybody involved, as I said, this has everything lined up to make this a home run. And you know what? In our heart, we need to do this. It's important that it succeeds on so many levels, and whatever it takes, we all have to work together from the county side. And the county does have a role in this. It's just down the road. It's longer into that service call before they're going to be there. That's just reality. It's not a criticism. It's just what it is. And as you know, in my case, that 3 minutes and 10 seconds, it would have made the difference in my life and a lot of others here. So pivoting this to get the mental health calls to the right person to solve it as quickly as possible is going to have better outcomes. So, I know we're all delighted to be part of this, and just want to say thank you to each one of you. You have a complex set of roles that you play on so many different levels, and you guys do it extraordinarily well. So thank you for this, and we look forward to continuing this partnership.
Robert?
Great, thank you. Chief, honestly, I couldn't be more pleased with this program. Absolutely impressive. Couldn't be more relevant in the period of time that we're in. And you took what most people consider a very complicated problem, and tonight, for the most part, you simplified it. I know there's a lot of moving parts, and I know there's this pilot program, hopefully will continue on in the future. But oh my God, to take when mental health calls outpace heart attack calls, obviously you got to do something. And I'm so proud of the fact that you and your team did that. You wrapped your arms around this and you made it happen. Evaluating a 911 call and bringing out the appropriate people, just just incredibly simple, but so important to our community. It's going to be probably one of the biggest things that we talk about this year on a very positive note. And thanks to your team for bringing this to our attention. And thank you for letting us be a small part of this. And 100% we're on board. And thank you for all that you do in this community. Very, very important work.
Dave?
Thank you.
Yeah, Paige and Team Fire, congratulations. You know, I'm not going to try to repeat what everyone has already said because they've articulated it well. What I'm most impressed with is the fact that you approached the solution collaboratively with all of the key stakeholders and making sure not only were they a part of the solution, but they contributed to the final solution. What's most important here is that this is a little disruptive. It's outside of the status quo. And yet the process for developing and soon implementing the solution is important as we try to address how we break the infrastructure, the infrastructure that's in place that hasn't been in place for many years. And how do we break it? But this is working because, you know, you're going to get the pushback, which is we've invested in our infrastructure. It's going to take too much money. It's going to take too many resources, and we just can't do it. There's a huge gap here. You've addressed that in the way that you've approached developing and implementing the solution. And I'm very impressed with just the development and really the implementation of the process, because I believe that is going to be the key to not just what's right for the Tri-Valley, but what's right for the county, for the state, and hopefully nationally as a solution to deal with this mental health issue.
Thank you.
So I have a quick question for you. So I know that San Ramon currently has their own police department, and we contract with the sheriff's department. So our calls go through a different routing system than they would if it was for San Ramon. How is that did I miss that in the presentation? Because I don't think I saw that. How is that being dealt with, and is it being dealt with?
Yeah, that's going to be our biggest challenge. I mean, I think, you know, Vice Mayor Arnrich, you know, spoke very accurately. I mean, I think that the county's dispatch center is good. There's no doubt about it. I think we're better. I mean, I'll be real honest with everybody. I've been doing this a long time. And when you have people in the same room talking across the room, and you have dispatchers that are not just focused on fire or just focused on police, but we have dual dispatchers. So they do both. Those are some challenges. But as Vice Mayor said, we can get over those. Those are challenges that we'll figure out a solution to. And I'm going to challenge the police department, the sheriff, to take advantage of what I sit on with Joe Calabrigo, the eBricks radio system. And when we get certain calls, demand that we are on the same channels and we are interoperable. And we have all this infrastructure that you all as taxpayers have paid, and me included, paid a lot of money to, and we pay a lot of money every year to eBricks. As Joe knows, he's on the finance committee, so I'm kind of joking with him a little bit, but we spend a lot of money, and there's no reason that we can't find a solution to that problem. That being said, I will say I'm going to challenge the sheriff's department because we have to get those calls. We have to triage them. We can't have a dispatcher system with 25 dispatchers in a room and we don't know who's talking to who. I need to get a hold of that call so that I can make sure that we don't have a bad mistake happen on the front lines. We have to be able to be interoperable. I think that training with the sheriff is going to be critical. And so we can overcome it. There's no doubt about it. But we also have to have agreement that when those calls come in, that they hit our dispatch center and we can have that interoperability when we're taking the lead, so that if things don't go well, when we call for police backup, it's seamless. We don't have to talk to their dispatch center that then talks to their officers and hope that it gets done. That's the big challenge. But like I said, I agree with, and I think I got to give credit to Joe Calabrigo, by the way. He reached out to me right away throughout this process. And I think he and I are in lockstep that we'll figure this out. But it will be a challenge, and there'll be some, probably some heavy lifting, but not anything that is insurmountable.
Okay. All right. And I believe I'd like to go to Joe right now before we open it up to public comment. Joe?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thanks again to the chief and your team for a great presentation. And of course, our chief Shields is here with me as well. You know, I think from my standpoint, there are a couple of topics that we are looking forward to having some dialogue with the sheriff's office on. And, you know, to take a step back again, you know, we've talked about the fact that our fire protection district here is split about 50-50 in terms of primary and secondary PSAP responsibilities for the entire service area. So in Danville's case, the fact that sheriff's office is the primary PSAP for Danville, not something that's likely to change under the current service delivery model that we have. So, you know, the question is, what can we do to make sure that we are addressing some of these concerns in that communication model, and in how calls get triaged, and how that communication occurs. And then I think secondarily, and I don't want to overlook this as well, is that there needs to be some discussion around, to the extent that it's relevant, and Chief Shields can speak to this, the need to look at some of the policies that the sheriff's office operates under, where, you know, I think if we talk to Chief Shields and law enforcement right now, not necessarily a lot of flexibility on the law enforcement side in terms of what they can do in response to some of these calls, in terms of what gets sent as a 5150 and what doesn't. So, you know, those are both areas that we need to look at in order to try to work toward this model of service delivery. And I think where, you know, San Ramon initially perhaps is the pilot, the pilot of the pilot. Danville has the potential to be the pilot for the rest of the district that isn't San Ramon, because, you know, we've got to figure out how to solve those things for the portion of the service area that falls outside of the city of San Ramon. So, Chief Shields, anything you want to add to what I've said?
Thank you, Mr. Calabrigo. I appreciate it. First off, Chief Meyer, thank you for the presentation. It was a very, very thorough presentation, and just generally, thank you for the service that you provide and the men and women that work underneath you provide, because I know that the community, the town of Danville is certainly safer, and I know the San Ramon Valley is certainly healthier because of all of the efforts that you and your team do. So just I never miss an opportunity in public to say thank you and kudos to you and your team. You do an excellent job. From the sheriff's office side, we're always going to work in partnership with the community. We're always going to work in partnership with our agencies here in San Ramon. And if there's groups out there looking for innovative ways to solve problems, we want to make sure that we are, you know, viewing and watching and working with them on that. When it comes to dispatch services and how we respond, those are all handled well above my level, and those are all directed by the sheriff himself. And I obviously I do not speak on behalf of the sheriff, but our model of response is not necessarily going to change. We're going to continue to respond to priority calls as they come in, but we're willing to continue to look and work and speak with the fire department on this.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to do now, if possible, I'd like to go ahead and open it to the public for any questions or comments, concerns that will be addressed at the end of the public comment. So if you do have any questions currently, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you could raise your hand, Marie Sinceri will call on you and you'll be able to speak. And I'd like to remind everybody that we are speaking of topic and item, agenda item number 5.1, which is the first responders for mental health. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over and see if Marie, if we have any people that would like to address us under public comment. I have you on mute right now, I believe. I have that shirt, by the way. I'm selling them. You're on mute. It's my new shirt I'm selling.
Yeah.
So.
We have several speakers. Yes. So let me go ahead and share my screen for the timer. And our first speaker will be Kathy Shiverton.
Hi, Kathy, and welcome. We're glad you could be here with us this evening.
Good evening, Mayor Morgan. I am delighted to be here also. And hello to all the members of the Town Council. I am Kathy Shiverton, as Newell identified me earlier. I'm the Executive Director of Discovery Counseling Center, and I am thrilled to be here. And I want to commend the San Ramon Valley Protection District, the Board of Directors, their chief, their labor union, all the whole staff for working so hard on putting this proposal together. This is an innovative proposal that will better serve those experiencing a mental health crisis. And not only does this initiative provide a skilled medical response to those in the midst of a crisis, it also brings much needed support to those whose loved ones are in crisis and who may be reluctant to call the police. That's a huge number of people who don't feel comfortable calling the police when their loved ones are in crisis. This creative approach, combined with the county's proposed community crisis response, also known as the Miles Hall Non-Police Crisis Response Program, will help ensure that those in crisis get the compassionate care and the appropriate resources they need to recover and thrive. I'm also very optimistic that this transformative program will increase awareness about mental health and the importance of early intervention in the treatment of mental illness. By supporting this pilot program, the town of Danville, and I thank the comments that were made today and so wholehearted support of this, together with the fire district, will create a model that has the potential to change in a very fundamental way how we see and treat the most vulnerable among us. And I thank you for all that you can do. And I understand that there are challenges with dispatch centers, but I thank you ahead of time for all that you can do to make this well thought out plan operational in Danville and the rest of the fire district area as soon as possible. I'm not speaking, I know that lives are at stake, and I thank you for your work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Marie?
Yes, the next speaker is Natasha Verma.
Welcome, Natasha.
And Natasha, you're on mute, so let's see if we can get you unmuted. Let's move on to Veronica Benjamin.
Welcome back, Veronica.
Yes, thank you for opening this up to public comment.
We lost you there.
Okay.
Again, sorry, the window came up again. Again, I was just saying I'd like to, in line with what everyone else has been saying, express my deepest gratitude for all the work. And it seems like it's been a multi-agency project that has put this together. This is the second time I've seen a presentation of this project, and I believe I'll watch it again. I just had one question and one comment. My question is, have they anticipated having to maybe change it or integrate it with the new suicide prevention line 988, which apparently that line will just come into being in midsummer 2022, no matter what. So I'm not sure if that's part of their programming to see how to get the dispatch to be more streamlined. My comment is that we are forming a community organization called Conscious Contra Costa, and we're really trying to boost public engagement around projects such as this. So I'd just like to let the fire chief and everyone else working know that when you come to that step 4 of your plan, that we'd be very eager to work with you and to host you and to just spread the word about this amazing program. So again, thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you, Veronica. Marie?
Yes, the next speaker is Natasha Verma.
Welcome back, Natasha. Are you there? Are we here, Natasha? Do you want to go on to the next speaker perhaps, or is she just on mute?
Yes, we'll move to Sarah Stroin.
Welcome back, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm really grateful to have the chance to address the council and guests for a second time tonight. Yeah, my name is Sarah Stroin, and thank you so much, Chief Meyer. That was just a fantastic presentation. And I'm really excited to have learned about this pilot program tonight. And yeah, so thank you for that. I did want to just address the issue of race in triage. And hopefully, you know, this is going to be a consideration and part of your training. But you know, we frequently see across the United States and in our town that people of color are often, you know, unfairly labeled violent in maybe a triage situation where, you know, a white person would be labeled nonviolent. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring that topic into the public consciousness, and hopefully we can just, you know, collectively address how triage is going to better consider, you know, the factor of race and the discrimination that can often happen in those situations. So yeah, that's all I have. And thank you again for all of the work for everyone who has presented on this topic tonight. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay. Let's see if Natasha.
Hi, guys.
Uh-oh, you came in, now you're gone. Come back, let's see. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thanks so much. Good, okay. So thank you so much to Chief Shields. I'm sorry, to Chief Meyer for his presentation.
Are you there, Natasha?
She appears to have muted herself.
Natasha, are you on mute? Okay, give you a couple seconds more because if there's somebody else, we can try to come back again. Natasha, are you there? Okay, so let's come back again.
Okay, the next speaker is Michelle Luker.
Hello, Michelle.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Morgan and Town Council. I just wanted to say thank you to Chief Meyer for the presentation. This is the first I've heard of this pilot program, and I was not aware that San Ramon handled their calls differently. So I just wanted to comment and hope that the Town Council will support this pilot program in Danville. As the daughter of a former lieutenant in the San Francisco Police Department and the sister of 2 firefighters, I just think that this is going to shift the way we handle mental illness, especially in the town of Danville. So I just wanted to lend my encouragement and hope that this is something the Town Council will move forward with. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, let's see if we can get Natasha back.
Nice shot.
Natasha?
Okay. All right, so if we can't get you back, Natasha, perhaps you'd like to write in your comments and we'd be happy to take a look at them. It's just because we've got other speakers coming as well. We'd like to hear what you have to say, but we're obviously having some kind of technical difficulties here. So Natasha, are you there? Okay, so what I'd like to do is encourage Natasha. Natasha, are you there?
I can't hear it. I have 15.
Okay, so I don't hear you, Natasha. I hear speaking, but I don't hear you. So what I'd like to do, Marie, is to encourage Natasha to send us a letter of what you'd like to talk to or comments that you'd like to make, if that's possible, an email, and then go on to the next speaker, please.
There are no other hands raised to speak for this item.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to go ahead and close the public portion of this agenda item and bring it back. Chief Meyer, would you like to address any of the comments that were made?
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. Yeah, I would. I actually would. As far as 988, that's a great point that the caller made. She actually brought up an issue that we probably should have mentioned in our presentation. One of the things that we want to do, and we think will happen, and we hope will happen, is the more that we take this proactive stance, again, we think we can flatten the curve and lower some of those calls, and then people have more time to utilize things like 988. That would be implemented. We already have an ability to send people to hotlines, obviously through our dispatch center. So we're already very active in giving people alternatives when appropriate. But as far as 988, we think it's a great plan. And we look forward to that because I think that again lends itself to reducing the amount of time people call 911. So any way that we can do that is positive. The second part of that, and we didn't mention it, one of the things we've done is we have the ability to provide FaceTime capability to the MCRT team, the county's team. We want, when we go to these calls, to engage technology to get a face-to-face with a clinician, a psychologist, possibly having the ability to alleviate some of the stress that's going to be put on the county's program as well. We forget that part, right? The more we can intercept these and the more we can put people in a position to have alternative destination or the ability to talk to somebody that may be able to handle the issue up front, it's a big deal. So 988, we're looking at this as a way to kind of get in front of all these issues. So we're very proactive. As far as the discussion with diversity, quite frankly, we acknowledge it as an issue. So we are, as part of our training, it's obviously going to be a part of what we do in as far as training goes. But keep in mind, on a triage, when we triage, it's on the phone. So we triage not based on race. We triage based on the symptoms and or what the card is, the questions that are being asked. So typically speaking, you're going to see firefighters get on scene, and I say this with respect to everybody's opinion. I have great confidence when we're dealing with EMS and fire. People get really happy when they see us. I mean, I've gotten more compliments tonight. I think I'm going to come back next Tuesday just to hear them all over here. But in all seriousness, we believe having firefighters on scene and having EMS on scene is going to alleviate a lot of stress. We see that right away. That's one of the things we train on, is reducing shock levels at any call we go to, calming down the cardiac arrest victim or patient, the trauma victim. That's what we do. So we think that'll be a big part of the face-to-face. And finally, the time frame. We have time. One of the things we wanted to do, this program, and I mean, and this needs to be very clear to the public and to the town council, we're not going to be like the old school fire department. And I say that because now I've been in this business for 30 years and I blinked, right? But in the old school fire department, doesn't matter what the call is, just go to the call and figure it out. Training or no training, you're going cat in a tree, storm drain, whatever the call is, the weirder it happens, usually we go. And this is one of those moments in history where, in order to get it right, it's going to be several months of training. We have to get the systems right, the training right, to put our firefighters in the best position to be successful. And I know my bosses here, President Stamey, Vice President Crean, they demand that. And they want our folks to be ready to go when we flip that switch. So we have time to figure out the dispatching component. We have time to include Danville and hopefully the larger fire district. That's our goal. That's always been our goal. So just keep that in mind as we go forward. We're looking best case scenario fall to start this program off. So hopefully, and I'm confident, as I said before, in dealing with Joe Calabrigo, I think that he has made very clear to me this is a priority early on. And he didn't have to demand, because we welcomed him, but he demanded to be at the table, and we're happy to have him. And I think with his leadership and our ability to look through all the challenges, we're going to figure out a way to make it happen in the town of Danville. I'm that optimistic. So I just leave it at that. I think those were all the comments that I heard. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you for all that. So I'd like to go ahead and bring it back to council for any further comments or questions. Okay. Seeing none, I just wanted to thank you all once again for being here this evening. You know, Danville Police Department and together with the Fire Protection District, you all currently work in great harmony together. But to me, this is the crescendo to get it right for mental health. And I applaud all of you for doing this and for being here this evening. Definitely needed. So thank you once again for being here. And we look forward to implementing this program, if not prior to fall, by the fall. So thank you all for being here this evening. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and move on. We don't have anything as big as this to talk about, but our next item on the agenda right now would be our consent calendar. And so the consent calendar are items that are considered routine in nature and acted upon by the town council, usually in one motion, unless a member from the council would like to remove an item from the consent calendar. Is anybody from the council wanting to remove an item for discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll like to go ahead and see if there's anybody in the public, Marie, that would like to remove an item from consent.
There are no hands raised.
Okay, I'd like to bring it back to the council.
I'd like to move the consent agenda items 6.1 to 6.5.
Second.
Okay, so I have a first and a second. Can we do the roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Fong.
Aye.
Councilmember Stepper.
Yes.
Councilmember Storer.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich.
Yes.
And Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
And the consent calendar was approved unanimously.
So I spoke too soon when I said we really don't have anything else on the agenda that's exciting. So I'll take that comment back. Item 7.1 is our town manager's report, and I'd like to turn it back over to Joe Calabrigo.
Well, all right, Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you. Yeah, that's a bit of a tough act to follow. So I have forwarded to council a written copy of my monthly update earlier today. So I'm going to try to hit some high points here to see if I can avoid going on for a half hour. But I want to try and at least hit on some key topics. So and as usual, this month we're going to start by talking about COVID, because June 15th is the date that the state has told us now that all sectors of our economy are going to move away from the color-coded blueprint for a safer economy to return to, for lack of a better way of describing it, pre-COVID operations. So we will continue to operate in the orange tier until June the 15th. And as a reminder, there are still California Department of Public Health requirements that are going to need to be followed with respect to face coverings under certain conditions, even after June the 15th. So don't want folks to get rid of those masks just yet. One of the topics of quite a bit of conversation, both in person and online over the last couple of weeks, has had to do with the resumption of large-scale outdoor community events. Here in Danville, you know, we all love our community events, parades especially, it seems. We've previously been told by the state for the last couple of months, ever since they came out with the announcement that June 15th, the color-coded blueprint was going away, we've been told that we could expect further guidance on these large outdoor special events. So unfortunately, we waited and waited and waited and really weren't getting a green light on when it would be possible to resume those types of events, or really even to resume planning for them. As the council is aware, with a lot of these events that are staged in Danville, you know, the amount of time that it takes to plan an event is considerable. And that's why I think for the most part, we've been planning for these events to resume in 2022. And even though the state had indicated, I want to say back in March, that you know, the June 15th date was coming and what it meant, that wasn't the case for large-scale outdoor community events. So just recently, in fact, on March the 21st, which is just a week ago Friday, we finally got some state guidance on whether and how these events could resume, all the way up to the so-called mega events, which are the large-scale gatherings, either indoors or outdoors. So we know now, based on what we were provided on the 21st of May, that these events can move forward after June the 15th. However, the state continues to include what they characterize as some very strong recommendations for the organizers of these events with respect to requirements like vaccine verification, negative testing, masking, and the like. So based on this, we have resumed working with some of our event sponsors for certain events that we are planning toward seeing occur after September 1st. Why after September 1st, you might ask? Well, first, it allows for more time for people to get vaccinated. So that quarter of the population that hasn't started that process yet will have more time to do that. Two, it gives us some additional time from the state to see whether or not those recommendations are going to change further. We wait another couple of months, things go the way they go. Are we still looking at requiring masking, you know, proof of vaccine, so on and so forth? And third, but certainly not least, it allows time for event planning, because as I said, these large-scale outdoor events require a significant amount of planning. They don't just happen, which is why, not to repeat myself, but all the way back in January, I think many of our event sponsors decided at that time that they were going to forego those events this year, because based on what we were all hearing at that time, none of us had cause for optimism that anything was going to be able to resume before 2022. So based on the most recent direction that we received on May 21, we are now working with Kiwanis towards staging a parade, which for this year, and this year only, would be held on September the 4th. We're in contact with other event organizers as well, whose events happen in the fall, to see if there might be interest on the part of some of those event organizers. And as we have more information based on our conversations with the event organizers, we will share that with the council and with the community. I do want to underscore, and I think that this is important, that throughout the duration of this pandemic, the town has been working within the orders and the guidelines that have been laid out by the State Department of Public Health and by Contra Costa Health Services. So all of the actions, all of the steps that have been taken by the town have been consistent with those health orders and directives from those agencies. Any changes, be they related to community events, facility rentals, programming, the services that we're here to provide, have been and are going to continue to be in keeping with what the state tells us. So I just need to underscore that the town hasn't been making it up as we go along. We haven't been making up our own rules. And I know that for some, this may seem like too much or not enough, but those are the facts. As of today, we've got about 1.33 million vaccines that have been administered in Contra Costa. So 74.3% of our adults have received at least their first vaccine in Danville, just a little bit higher than that, 74.6%. And we're continuing to urge all of our community members to get their vaccines. We are planning in terms of town services to reopen all of our facilities for walk-in traffic, not appointment only, as of Tuesday, July the 6th. Transitioning over to economic development, continuing to assist and support our businesses in a number of ways. As far as parklets and outdoor seating, we touched upon that a little bit earlier under Good of the Town. With respect to how long those parklets are going to be there, though the current permits are approved through August the 1st, we are looking at the possibility of extending that out further as late as possible in the month of August. Council will be talking about this at your next meeting on June the 15th. You know, as I indicated earlier, with all the feedback that we've been receiving on this, it is important to understand that while we've issued temporary LUPs to help sustain our businesses through the pandemic, any process that looks at extending these further would need to consider things like the public benefit of doing that, zoning, building, parking requirements, those sorts of things. So there is a difference between a temporary accommodation to get us through an emergency and a vested, more permanent solution. And they're not necessarily the same thing. As I mentioned earlier, the council, you have asked to have included in the capital improvement program, looking at undertaking a new master plan for the downtown area that would look at, along with other considerations, including things like outdoor seating, street furniture, public spaces, and lighting. Moving forward, economic development wise, just to highlight the To Danville with Love regional campaign, the partnership with Visit Tri-Valley and our surrounding Tri-Valley cities, still ongoing. You've seen signs out around the downtown encouraging residents to support our local businesses now more than ever. And Visit Tri-Valley has also taken the lead to develop different tools to promote and market this campaign, which I believe will be running through July. We have over 40 of our local businesses that are participating in the Promise Pass, which is a savings app that you use to shop and dine around the valley. Farmers Market, council office hours are back at the Farmers Market as of the 1st of last month. With our downtown pickup zones, we're continuing at a staff level to adjust and, as I like to say, jigger those 10-minute pickup zones to help those that are still not comfortable dining or shopping in person so that they can temporarily park, dash in, pick up whatever it is they need to pick up and be on their way. So we're continuing to look at that through the summer months. The Forward Focus Grant Program, not to get lost in the shuffle, slowing down just a little bit. We've awarded a total of 138 grants so far. Got about $65,000 remaining to be allocated of the original $525,000 that were appropriated. That was appropriated. And, you know, those applications, they continue to trickle in. We've got 67 businesses participating in the Business Assistance Program, so that's been going well. And the other thing that I would add, and this is new, if you will, the Vision 2040 plan launch that has been in the works with Innovation Tri-Valley. They are planning to launch that on June the 10th at 4 o'clock. They are inviting all of their ITV partners to join that celebration, and we can talk to council about how to get you tickets to that event if you are interested. Shifting over onto finance, 21-22 budget capital improvement program. The council has spent over 18 hours and 5 study sessions right through this morning reviewing the 21-22 budget and the CIP. So that will be before the council for formal action at your next meeting on June the 15th. I will just say, and I've said it before, that our forecasts place the town in much better shape financially than where we were last year at this time, when we were dealing with so much uncertainty with respect to how the pandemic was going to impact the economy, local businesses, town revenues, and so on. So, we are looking with the 21-22 budget at going back to roughly where we were in terms of spending in 1920. So we are on the short end of what we had forecast last year would be a 2 to 4 year recovery. Looking at 2 years, we will be continuing to operate at somewhat lower staffing levels with, some service level impacts, but transitioning back and recovery well underway. And I know that we continue to get questions about the American Recovery Act plan, and we would anticipate discussion about the ARAP dollars that the town is eligible to recover as a non-entitlement city. The longer we wait, the better the information is that we get from the Department of the Treasury that describes in greater detail how these funds can be used. So the town is not presently relying on those funds to balance the 21-22 budget, but I believe that the council will be anxious to talk about how to use those funds to go back and plug some of the holes that were created as a result of the reductions that had to be made in 2021 on both an operating and a capital front. Not going to go into legislation a whole lot because you received a very detailed report at your last meeting from Diane Friedman. So our advocacy focus continues to be on supporting legislative efforts that assist with pandemic recovery. And we've also advocated in favor of limiting legislation that further impacts our local decision-making ability related to things like planning and housing. And so positions that we have taken in that regard are based on that policy. We have continued to support AB 988, which has been sponsored by our own Rebecca Bauer-Cahan. And we are optimistic that is going to move forward. Council's also been provided with an update on grants and earmarks in terms of what we have been applying to for and have described that we've seen some success. We've received some highway safety improvement grant of $240,000 that we'll use to upgrade several pedestrian crossings. Our projects have made the short list for Congressman DeSaulnier and the list that he submitted to the Appropriations Committee. So we are, we're watching all of that while we continue to select, identify and select other grant opportunities to pursue. We, given our location, demographics and such, many of the grant dollars that are out there now are really being targeted for disadvantaged, so-called disadvantaged communities. So there are many that we don't qualify for, but we're continuing to work very closely with Townsend to pursue any and all grant opportunities that we think we would have a good chance to qualify for. HCD and the regional housing needs allocation process. None of my monthly updates would be complete if I didn't touch on this. We are moving forward with our outreach and engagement efforts related to the 23 through 30 housing element process. We do anticipate that we will be appealing our RENA allocation with ABAG. We have now launched a new platform to provide notifications about housing element updates. And we've actually had a few dozen people register already to get those notifications. And they're also beginning to use the ask a question section of that site to obtain more information. The 23 through 30 housing element does represent a pretty tall challenge for us. We've been assigned a very high number of housing units to plan for over the next 8 years, some 4 times as many as the previous cycle. And we're also grappling with the fact that a significant majority of those units have to be affordable to low and very low income individuals or households. Police services, police has resumed their Citizen Academy program. The chief is continuing to do his weekly 10/8 outreach via Facebook Live. The chief has been involved with me, working with me in the meetings that we've had with the fire district to talk about the mental health pilot program that you just talked about. And, you know, we continue to have posted on our website information and a Q&A with respect to the March 11th officer involved shooting that some of our speakers spoke to earlier. There's good information on that website, including, I think, information that would probably respond to the questions that were raised by Mr. and Mrs. Beck. In development services, there continues to be a lot of activity, but you know, unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with staff movement. This past month, both of our permit technicians have given us notice and or moved on. So for those of you who are familiar with our permit techs, that's AJ and Perlita. So we've hired 2 new permit techs as well as a new building inspector to continue to run fully staffed there. One of our new permit techs is Joy Pellizzari, who has been working in finance. In fact, Joy is one of the people who has dealt with business license, among other things, I think, and very, very good on the customer service side of things. And we look at this as a win-win for Joy and for building. Planning, we've talked about the housing element already. Development activity, council has received information that just shows you the number of different projects that we have going on in town right now. 15 different projects that when you add them all up, as many as 369 homes in various stages of the entitlement process. Talked about transportation as part of the capital improvement program. The new townwide bike master plan is going to come to council at your study session next Tuesday, the 8th, and then it'll be coming to you for formal action at your first council meeting in July. So that will be on the 6th. Council will also be considering the entire capital improvement program at your meeting on the 15th. And that includes, I think, responding to feedback that has been received from community members on things like the installation of ADA compliant ramps in the Greenbrook neighborhood, looking at a phased approach to the repaving of El Pintado Loop, skate parks, downtown, or excuse me, town green master plans, all of those things that the council has spent some considerable time and effort parsing through to prioritize things properly and get those right. Maintenance services, just, you know, we're dealing with a drought, and East Bay Mud, as they've done in the past, will institute increasingly progressive rate tiers for all water users. We have, as council has heard from our maintenance services director, Dave Castile, we're continuing to look at areas where we can eliminate ornamental or passive turf in roadsides and or parks, and, you know, replacing those with mulch or other types of more drought tolerant plant material. We've got a number of small landscape rehabilitation projects that are happening throughout town right now. Our street maintenance crews have been busy with pavement markings, red curbs, sidewalk replacement, making some small curb and gutter repairs along the Camino Tasajara corridor. And we will be repainting the town service center coming up very quickly here. On the recreation, arts, and community services side, I am not going to attempt to summarize all of the exciting new things that our recreation, arts, and community services staff have been working on. This is all laid out in the memo that I gave to the council. We are looking at how we transition back from COVID to conditions that more closely reflect the new or the old normal, depending on how you want to refer to it. There's a ton of stuff going on in cultural arts, from exhibits, preschool performances. Some of you have commented on the Shroom and Lumen public art exhibit that was installed toward the end of May, and it was launched on Memorial Day. So amazing that public art and mushroom sculptures can do all the things that these do. So for folks who haven't seen them yet, they should stop by the Town Green or the Village Theater, especially after dark, because they put on quite a show. A lot of other programs and activities, Kidchella in partnership with our library team, Moonlight movies at the Town Green scheduled for July 16th and 30th. Music in the Park, a couple of concerts scheduled with, we'll call it assigned seating this year, as opposed to what we've done in the past. A lot of good things going on with seniors. For our active folks, senior softball is back up and running again, in addition to bocce ball. Sports and fitness, we're interviewing aquatics staff for our summer programs that'll be run at San Ramon Valley High School this year. Monte Vista is not a part of the equation with the work that they're getting ready to do to that facility. We're anticipating adult softball leagues are going to get started up again this summer, with adult bocce not far behind. And with rentals, we're looking at how we transition back into facility rentals, field rentals, indoors, outdoors, and the like. So again, a lot going on as well with youth and teens, moving after Zoom-in, kids night out, programs, a whole series of things that happened along the Star Wars theme, and the May the 4th event that happened last month. Summer registration, we've got almost 2,500 residents or 2,500 participants that have registered so far. And of those, about 80% of those are residents, about 20% non-residents for all of our camps, classes, and aquatics offerings. Again, high demand for aquatics and program classes. So we have been looking at adding additional registration spots for those that have been waitlisted, so that we can increase class sizes, but still operate appropriately. Our senior commission, want to mention that they're going to be holding in-person intercept events throughout the town to gather information as they put together the age-friendly roadmap for Danville. There have been 2 of these events that have been held already, and we have remaining events that are coming up, a couple of them this week on June 3rd and June 5th. June 3rd, it'll be from 11 to 1 at Trader Joe's. On the 5th, from 8:30 to 10:30 at Bagel Street. Next week on the 7th, we'll be out from 8:30 to 10:30 at Pete's. And then Wednesday the 9th, from 2 to 4 at Starbucks on Crow Canyon and Camino Tasajara. So we're trying to cover different parts of town, different times of the day, in the interest of trying to get as much feedback as we can. So a lot of activity going on as we move toward, we'll call it the summer of recovery. At this point, I will conclude my presentation, and I'd be happy to respond to any council questions.
Newell.
Well, Joe, thanks for the highlight of that. I just want to mention something before I ask my question. I just want to know, Michelle Lee, who is a fellow board member of San Juan Valley Fire Protection District, has been on the call the whole time. She's been on the attendee. Nobody recognized her. I didn't see her in the list. But she was here to support what the board was doing, and just sent a personal comment to say how much she appreciates the support from Danville and everybody.
And also, Vice Mayor, pardon me for interrupting, but give a shout out to Board Member Lee, because as you recall, she attended one of our budget study sessions in the in the interest of learning as much about what was going on here as she could. So appreciated that as well.
Okay, so thank you, Michelle. Joe, and Mayor Morgan mentioned it, on the 15th of July or June, we're looking at our council meeting and talking about the parklet permits and stuff like that. But that we were going to have next Tuesday, our study session starts at 11. That was also going to have a general discussion about that. Is that correct? Or did I miss that when we talked about that earlier today?
See, we're on mute now, Joe. There you are.
I found the button. It may just be the fact that I've sat in meetings for so long today, Vice Mayor, that I'm drawing a blank on this. So, yeah, I don't recall that we were going to be, well, what we were going to talk about on June the 8th was, in addition to the bike master plan, was the meeting format for town council meetings moving forward. So in terms of when those will go back to being live and in person, and what times of the day those will be held.
Okay, so bottom line is just because somebody had asked me, and so bottom line is if we are not going to be putting on the agenda any discussion about parklets and things like that for that city study.
Yeah, I don't recall that. My recollection is we were going to skip that and go to June the 15th, and Jill Bergman will be preparing a staff report as as something to talk off of there.
Yeah, I guess that was the one question, and the comment I have, just to you, Joe, Rob, everybody that's been involved over the past 15 months, extraordinary efforts by so many people on our staff to keep government services going at a time where we cut 15% of our staff to tighten our budgets, but still keep services going. And it's just exciting that we've been able to get through it. Our employees all personally took cuts. We don't do automatic pay raises. We don't do cost of living raises. We don't do anything like that, like virtually everybody around us. And I know this year we're trying to help, basically say thank you and try to get things back to more normal and compensation. But it really is an extraordinary group of people who do extraordinary things to provide the highest level of services to make lives better in Danville. And just personally, just a huge thank you to everybody.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you for saying that, Noel.
Much appreciated, Vice Mayor and Mayor. I will certainly make sure that finds its way back to the staff, because I think we've all sort of approached this from the standpoint of the pandemic is something that has impacted the entire community, and employment-wise, whether you're in the public sector, whether you're an independent business person, whatever your circumstances, I think we've just tried to do what we could do to support the community and continue to deliver service as best we can through this. So appreciate the feedback for the staff.
Absolutely. Any other questions of Joe? Thank you once again for the report. We appreciate it. Dave, did you just took yourself, or you're getting ready to take, oh, he's getting ready for his agenda item. Okay, yeah. All right, so we're going on to town council reports. And as you can tell, Councilmember Fong has unmuted himself so that he can report to us on the MCE Clean Energy. And that is a report from Councilmember Fong.
Yeah, one of the quick lessons I learned today is stay off mute when you're expected to be off mute. So I did that. Thank you, Mayor Morgan, and thank you, Town Council. So I'm going to try to keep my presentation brief just for the interest of time. And I'm going to talk specifically about MCE, who is our provider of alternative energy. But I want to give you a little bit of backdrop on what's going on at the state level. And as you all know, that there is an initiative to grow clean energy and also to adopt as a state to go to this clean energy platform. Just give you a quick update on some of the stats right now. Right now, California aims to have 60% of its energy produced from renewable resources by 2030. And currently it's at 31% renewable and 55% greenhouse gas free. Secondly, that the growth of clean energy is trending very positive. Currently, there's over 200 communities participating in one of the 23 community choice aggregation programs, serving over 11 million customers, of which MCE is also a provider and a member. The main goals of the CCAs have been either to lower costs for consumers or to allow consumers greater control of their energy mix, mainly by offering greener generation portfolios than the local utilities. We see CCAs continue to play an important role in the transition to clean energy. And we believe that as we take a look at hitting this 2030 mark, that as of right now, it's purchasing double the amount of renewable energy required by the state compared to where it first started in 2011. MCA and CCAs are currently probably in the strongest position to really make a difference as the biggest drivers of renewable energy adoption and development over the next couple of years or many years. A little bit about MCE. As you know, they are our provider of alternative energy. As the first CCA member, they fueled the development of the other CCAs across the state. And as a result of that, have created an association that currently lobbies and really contributes to state legislation on establishing industry best practices. It's currently operating out of 4 counties and continues to operate only in these 4 counties, but more specifically 36 community service areas with an 86% average participation rate. And just so you know a little bit about which counties, it's Marin, all of the communities of Marin and Napa, most of the communities in Contra Costa and Solano County, and projected, the city of Fairfield will enroll with MCE in 2022. And there's approximately another 5 jurisdictions in Contra Costa County that are eligible and 4 in Solano. The key successes over the past 11 years for MCE, 15 local energy projects, including one of the largest public-private solar projects in the Bay Area, over $2 billion committed statewide to new renewables, and the creation of a lot of innovative programs when it comes to energy resilience, EV infrastructure, and building electrification programs. Right now, MC is providing almost double the amount of renewable energy to our customers compared to PG&E, meeting the state renewable energy goals 13 years earlier than expected. Now, there's been rumors on the street that some of these providers are having financial problems. In fact, there was one that announced a recent bankruptcy. I wanted to reassure the council and our community that the bottom line of MCE is very strong with excellent reserves. Additionally, as an index, it has received 3 investment-grade credit ratings from Moody's, Fitch, and S&P, and maintain a final reserve that meets or exceeds the industry standards when it comes to fiscal responsibility. The benefit of being financially strong and their solid credit rating is that we're able to procure power at a more competitive, cost-competitive price. Probably most important to everyone is that MCE hasn't had an increase in rates since 2019 and doesn't anticipate and increase over the course of this next year. Key challenges right now for MCE, and we've talked about it several times, and Diane has mentioned it in the legislative reviews, legislative issue reviews, is that we've got to do something about these exit fees that are charged to CCA customers. They're unfair. They increase the total cost of service, and it's just another way of, I think, discouraging the community when it comes to making the right choice when it comes to power and energy. Opportunities, I think, right now for us is that MCE's come up with a fairly aggressive rebate program for vehicles and charging infrastructure. They've got rebates that are currently available for EV that's available to individual customers, and they're also offering EV incentives for workplaces and multifamily properties, and they're fairly substantial. As I mentioned, how does MCE partner with Danville, and what can Danville do to support MCE on a go-forward basis? One, strong advocacy on this bill called SB 612 that provides more parity and fairness when we're talking about exit fees charged to CCA customers. And secondly, MCE makes it quite clear that it's available and has continued to be available to work closely and partner with communities by participating in events, by collaborating with the chamber on different educational and informational programs. And then secondly, that it recently, the board approved the $10 million credit program to support vulnerable customers and small businesses struggling due to COVID. And so there's more information now that would address residential customers as well as small businesses and the credits that are available to reduce that burden during that COVID period. In summary, Danville's partnership with MCE has benefited not only our community, but others as well, with lower cost alternative to energy, combined with delivering our commitment to grow clean energy use. At this time, that is the summary of my report, and would like to open up to any comments or questions.
Are there any comments or questions?
I'd like to make Councilmember Fong a lifetime appointment to MCE board.
Thank you for your consideration.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is we all sit on various different outreach committees and all of that, and so to have such a thorough report is really nice. But next on the agenda is the traffic's report, and that would be myself and our vice mayor, who I'm going to now serve the ball over to our vice mayor and let him do a brief update.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mayor Morgan. Traffic's, as those who might just be listening the first time, Traffic is the congestion relief agency that was started approximately 15 years ago that provides targeted congestion relief at our local schools from elementary through high school in both San Ramon and Danville. And we were able over the past 13 months to keep that program alive. Through the support from Contra Costa Transportation Authority, through the Measure J funding sources, so that we could still be at the ready whenever the school district. So we were ready in the fall, we were ready at the beginning of the year, and then finally when the school district reopened, we were able to get school buses back out to those schools. Most interesting thing was we have waiting lists on some of those buses. As you know, given the COVID restrictions, buses had every other seat, so we were very limited. But it also afforded the opportunity, particularly in elementary schools, where there were very few children that were riding, because there were very few that went back to in-classroom instruction. We were able to customize our routes to accommodate the people that were actually riding it. It's that flexible of a system. We were poised as school will start back up in the second week of August to be back at full service with all of our routes. And we were excited that we could survive this. As you know, in the La Miranda area, a bus system that's been around for 20 plus years went completely out of business during that. They do not have a program anymore. And so they have to figure out if they can restart one and how to rebuild that. But we were with the leadership in our board, through the county the school district, City of San Ramon, and Danville, we were able to keep it going. And I think we should be proud of that, and also thankful of CCTA's financial support. And that's it. Any questions? I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions or comments? Okay, so let's go ahead and go to town council updates. Are there any town council updates or comments? I would just like to make sure that I invite everybody on Friday. Oh, I see, Robert, did you have your hand up?
Well, I just want to say briefly that we just completed the Street Smarts program for the video contest. And I know, Mayor Morgan, you asked about a book that in the past we've seen. Well, they're not going to do a book this year because handing it out is going to be difficult. And, you know, touching one book to another person is not going to be the best way to approach this. But I've got to tell you, we always say this, but oh my God, the kids in our district are so incredibly talented. And, you know, the messages was, you know, how to wear a helmet, how to cross the street, between the editing and, you know, the animations and just videos well done. It was really hard to pick a winner, and there was multiple entries in every category. And, you know, once again, we got some talented kids in the school district.
Yeah, I absolutely love the book, and I'll tell you, years
Incredible.
back, my son entered the contest, and you know they just show you the picture, and then people vote on it. So when we got there, when it was the group of us that had to pick the final, I saw his picture sitting there, and I kept walking up to everybody saying, "Don't vote for that one, don't vote for that," because I didn't want anybody to think that it was there for a different reason, which is kind of unfair to him. Because he did a great job on it, but it's still the books and all that. The kids are just so creative, unbelievable creative. So once again, I wanted to remind everybody on Friday is Town Talks, and it's going to be a fun program. It's going to be all about our emergencies and being alert. And PG&E will be a guest talking about power outages in the past, as well as fire protection district apps that you want to download for emergencies and all that. So it's going to be a very interesting program. I encourage everybody to sign up via the website to get the Zoom code. So on that note, I don't see anything else. I'd like to go ahead and say have a great evening and congratulations to all the graduates out there that'll be graduating this week. On that, good night, everybody.